Hello everyone, with you spoiler time. And today I will tell you about movie Holes, in which children are sent to a special prison with no guard wall. But getting out of there is even harder than from the usual. And before starting, I ask you to do just 2 simple actions. Like under the video and subscribe to the channel. For you, just a couple clicks. A for S. Step towards our goal of 100,000 followers. Just a little bit left. Let's push up. Thanks everyone. And we start. We are introduced to a guy named Stanley Ilnats. One day he was just walking on the sidewalk, and boots flew on his head. And for that he immediately goes to jail. He is caught by the police and accused of stealing them. Grandfather tells that all this is because of the great-great-grandfather of the pig herder, who brought a curse upon himself and upon all his race. Stanley goes to re-education camp. It is in the desert in a small oasis. Stanley meets the camp caretaker, who everyone calls Mr. Sir. He then explains Stanley that running makes no sense. There's a desert in which there is no water for hundreds of miles and it does not rain. He is given clothes, and the second worker named MILF introduces Stanley to the other guys. All of them don't accept names and use only nicknames. For example, Stinky, X-Ray, Zigzag, and a few more guys. Also, there is a small height in their squad, a kid named Zero. They called him that because he is always silent, and therefore he has an empty head. At first Stanley is treated not really, but soon accept him into their ranks. At night Stanley remembers about that, what my grandfather said about the curse. Their family is doomed to failure. Stanley Ilnats first made a fortune, but he was robbed by a thief-kissing cat, and all of them are also haunted by failures. Early morning, everyone is sent to dig holes. Once there was a lake, but now there is only a desert. Guys' task is to dig holes every day, and if they find something, then they can get from the home. While Stanley digs, we are told about great-great-grandfather Stanley, who brought a curse on their family. He fell in love with a beautiful but silly girl, and decided to take advice from the local fortune teller Madame Zeroni. She advised him to go to America, because there is nothing for him to catch, and a girl like that he does not need. But then did not listen to her and still wanted to marry. Then she advised him to take the pig and every day carry on the mountain drink from the creek, and the pig will get healthier and bigger, and then he can give the pig to the girl's father. So did the young guy, but the girl is so stupid that I could not choose between a handsome guy and an old fool. And then he realized that Miss Zeri was wrong. Don't need him wife like that, and he went to America, but forgot to fulfill one important condition. Madame Zero did not ask him to take her to the same mountain and give and sleep to her from the creek. But the guy forgot about it and brought a curse on himself. Fortune tellers, after working a few days at Camp Stanley, writes parents a letter and says what? It's very good here and even fed normally, so that they do not worry. At a dig, Stanley finds a fossil and asks, can he get from him? But MILF tells that the chief doesn't care about fossils. Also, he says Stanley that this lake used to be owned by the chief's grandfather, and everything here belongs to him. And we are transported to the past. Once there was a huge lake and a city. The chief's grandfather was in charge and everyone respected him. A dark-skinned guy named Sam trades his miracle bow, and all people happily buy it. Sam falls in love with the local teacher Catherine. He brings her onions, and she gives peaches in return. X-Ray walks up to Stanley and says, "Till next time." When he finds anything carried him, Stanley gets nicknamed Comanche, and finally joins this collective, reading a letter from Mother. Stanley laughs with the fact that she writes Zero. It becomes interesting what is there, and then says that can't read and asks Stanley to teach him, but he refuses and says that he doesn't have time. At the dig, Stanley finds a strange thing, similar to a bullet with initials. She is taken by an X-ray, and the next morning he gives it to his mother. The boss immediately comes to such a find, which turns out to be a woman. She gives time off ringing and promises everyone a delicious dinner. But now their task, dig this whole plot up and down. We are transported to the past. Sam walks in, Kate, and offers to fix the roof in exchange for her peaches. So they started getting closer. When he's done fixing the roof, Kate herself asks him to fix the windows. To see each other. With Sam evening, Kate tackles lake owner, but she sews it off immediately. Sam, finishing all the repair work, minding his own business again, ferries onions on his boat. In the evening he decides. Kate comes and kisses her, but it sees the rejected lake owner. He decides to get revenge and burns the school down, and also kills Sam on a boat. All this sees Kate. After a while she comes to the sheriff to avenge that he allowed Sam to be executed and kills him, awarding a posthumous kiss. Another day of excavation, Mr. Sir brings water, and a guy named Magnet steals his seeds. Mr. Sir quickly notices this and comes back, and guys throw Stanley seeds. But in the end he doesn't give anyone away and takes the blame. The boss does nothing Stanley, but only on the contrary scolds his subordinate. Stanley notices posters about being caught in the office, kissing caught when Stanley returns. Everyone thinks he's handsome, and Zero dug a hole for him, and Stanley decides to teach him how to read. Now Zero digs instead of Stanley for that he teaches him to read, and Stanley pondering guesses that find was lipstick with initials. Kate Barlow's Kate becomes a real Avenger, robs and kills, leaving the dead a kiss. Zero says his real name is Hector Zerini. Turns out he is the great-great-grandson of a fortune teller, but they don't even understand that their fates intertwined. During lunch, Stanley clutches Zigzag, and they start a fight. However, a Zero is harnessed behind the Stanley. The boss arrives and starts a showdown. She finds out that Zero is digging for Stanley, and he teaches to read. MILF laughing with this and says that Zero is too stupid for that. What is he offended by and hits him in the face with a shovel. He runs away into the desert. The boss does not really care that the child may die. She only thinks about that. There's no investigation. Stanley recalls his grandfather's story about how Stanley the First survived 16 days in the desert and saved on some god's finger. The next day, Stanley steals a car and drives for Zero, but after driving not long falls into the pit. He runs away with his own move into the desert and finds Zero under the boat of Sam shot long ago. Zero has been eating those same peaches all this time. Stanley notices a strange mountain and realizes, what is that god finger about which grandfather spoke? They are moving out there. Zero manages to even save Stanley's life, hurting his hands, but together they almost get to the end. Zero loses consciousness and can't go any further. Zero tells a friend, what is it because of him he got here? He stole those same boots at the shelter and got scared. Threw them out. Stanley isn't mad about it and drags it on himself. There is a water source at the top. Zero and Stanley cheer, and also Stanley himself, without knowing it, fulfills Ms. Zeroni's request and removes the curse from their family. Immediately grows and delicious onions of Sam, who saves two fugitives' life. Stanley's lawyer arrives in the morning and reports what he's not guilty. Therefore it should be returned. But the boss hides the truth about that boy could already be dead. We are shown what in the past. Kissing Kate finds Sam's boat and for a moment even sees him, but the great-grandfather of the boss pulls up to her and tries to make say, where did she bury the treasure? She refuses to speak and assures what to him and all his relatives will have to dig through the entire former lake to find them. Then she kills herself, giving a bite to a poisonous lizard. Stanley and Zero go back to the dig before the others and decide to dig a hole in that place. Where did Stanley find the lipstick? They find their chest, but they are noticed by the caretakers and the boss. However, lizards do not give to get the chest. Who surrounded the Stanley and Zero boss recalls how to dig holes together with my grandfather. And finally she found something. What were they looking for? The police and lawyer arrive in the morning. The boss accuses the children of that they stole her chest and tried to escape, but it turns out to have Stanley's name on it. Stanley lets go from camp, and the boss and henchmen are waiting for verification, but Stanley asks to let go and Zero, and since there are no documents for him because he is an orphan, he is also taken with him. Stingray asks to pass the letter to her mother and says that realized what he was. All the guys are happy for Stanley and Zero and say goodbye to them. At home, Stanley shares the treasures of his great-grandfather with family and Zero, and the petty finds his mother, who was looking for him all this time. Ended up Zero and Stanley bought new houses and became neighbors, and also Stanley called all the freed guys to myself have fun. And this is where the movie ends. Don't forget to write in the comments how is he to you, and also put a grade from 1 to 10 like under the video if you liked it, and also subscribe to the channel because the goal is 100,000 subscribers. Already quite close. Make sure to press the bell